Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk Title with Emerald Coast Title Services. I'm president of ECTS and host Dion Moniz.
And I'm co-host, Director of Operations and Licensed Title Agent Ashley Bowen.
So today we're going to talk about a new federal law that Congress has enacted that becomes effective on January 1, 2024, and it's called the Corporate Transparency Act. And so the reason we're talking about it today is because it impacts LLCs, and so many people use LLCs to buy real estate.
A lot of people use LLCs to buy real estate.
Yeah. Which it's a great tool because of the liability protection and all that good stuff. So because LLCs are so prominent in real estate, we figured it'd be a good topic to talk about.
And we have had a lot of new laws in the state of Florida, and this is a new federal law that's going to affect us.
Yes, so this actually impacts all states whereby an entity has to be registered with the state. What is now required, well, let me back up. So the reason they have implemented this new law is that the feds want to be able to monitor and look for entities that they believe are being used for money laundering or other bad criminal acts.
Okay.
So what is now required is effective January 1 of 24, you've got to now report to the CTA, report to the federal agency any individuals that own 25% or more in the company. And that's an LLC, that's a corporation, that's any sort of corporate entity that has to be registered with the state, which in Florida is pretty much all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're called a beneficial owner. So if you own 25% or more in the company, or if you otherwise have what they call substantial control, which means you have the ability to hire and fire corporate officers or directors, then that is substantial control as far as the law is concerned. And so you have to, if the entity was formed prior to January 1 of 2024, then you actually have until January 1 of 2025 to file this report. If the entity is formed after January 1 of 2024, then you have 30 days to report this information. And if you knowingly violate this new law, it says serious criminal penalties will be imposed. So we don't know. That sounds
What
like
they
a felony.
are yet?
Yeah, sounds like a felony. They don't say what degree felony it is, or at least in the articles that I've researched. But it's serious criminal penalties. So they're trying to put some teeth into it to require these reports to be filed.
So you're going to have to file your LLC with the state, and then you have to go and file your members with the Fed.
Yes.
I hope that the state kind of combines that and they file it with the Fed for you.
They don't. So at least in the information I've researched, the entity has the obligation of filing the report with the federal agency. And then they also have to file any changes. So if the member changes their address, that change has to be reported within 30 days of the change.
Wow. And my other question is going to be like with Florida, I know that you have to go in and every year you have to file an annual report. You have to reinstate your LLC every year. Will it be the same way or only when you have changes?
Only when you have changes.
Okay.
And so there's a slight exception to for the company having to report the changes. And that's if the individual obtains a FinCEN number, FINCEN, which I checked, and it's not, you can't apply for one yet for this purpose, but if the individual gets a FinCEN number, then the company reports the number to the feds, and then the individual is responsible for reporting any changes in their information. And so what you have to report is the member's legal name, their address, their date of birth, and you have to file a copy of their passport or driver's license. So they've got you. You're in their system. Mm-hmm. You're not hiding. And so what's interesting is, states like Delaware, and I think Maryland might be another one. Anyway, there's a few states out there where when you register a corporate entity, you do not, the individual owner's information is not available to the public.
And we see that a lot. A lot of people use Delaware entities, I guess, for that reason.
Yep.
And then we cannot stand to see them as the title agent because we like to be able to go in there and pull all the information that we possibly can. Like we're researching these people in Delaware. It's just boop,
Right.
it all stops and you have to get it all from the people
Right.
individually.
Whereas Sunbiz, it's all public.
Yes.
So there was some concern about now, perhaps if you have a Delaware entity, now the individual information is going to be public because it's reported to this new federal system. Well, they've clarified that this information is confidential and can only be used by the federal agencies that are using it for monitoring purposes.
The IRS.
So it will not be public. Yeah, the IRS, probably one of them, I'm sure. The FBI, all that stuff. So that information is still going to be kept private for those states that have non-public information with regards to the owner info. So you also have to be the businesses or the entities that are going to qualify for this new reporting requirement, the CTA, is if you have less than $5 million in annual revenues, or if you have less than 20 full-time employees, which, you know, in our area is pretty much all any small business for the most part. If you have more than 5 million and more than 20 employees, then you don't qualify and you don't have to report. So big corporations don't have to worry about it.
So a lot of the people that we see with LLCs, a lot of the companies that we deal with, they will have an LLC for each piece of property.
Yep.
And so in that case,
qualify. Yeah,
okay.
Those will fall under the reporting requirements of the CTA.
Okay.
So the other interesting thing about this law is most of our clients that use LLCs to buy property will use me or one of the other lawyers in my firm to form the LLC for them. Well, what's called the company applicant, which is the person that files the registration, also has to be reported.
So you have to be reported on every one of these things with your date of birth and all of that stuff and your driver's license?
Yep.
Huh.
So ultimately what I'll do is I'll get a FinCEN number. And then anytime we file a corporate registration with Sunbiz, and we'll probably handle the reporting for the client as well, because it's just one of the services we'll want to provide because it's going to be too confusing for them.
And you currently already usually get their FEIN number and all of that. So it'll just be one more thing that you do.
Yep. So I'll have to report myself
every time.
Every time. Yeah. And so interestingly enough, even if you own an LLC that doesn't qualify, so if you are in a company that is outside the threshold, so more than 5 million, more than 20 employees, but that company has a subsidiary that's smaller and is less than 5 million, less than 20 employees, that still has to be reported. And ultimately, the owner of the subsidiary might be another LLC, but ultimately you have to report the owner of that holding company. So there's no way around it. Yeah. So yeah. So if you have an LLC that owns other LLCs, ultimately you still have to report your individual information.
They'll find you
exactly.
eventually.
Yes, exactly. So
you
can't
hide. Though, why are these bigger companies exempt? I mean, you would think that those would be the ones they would be the most concerned with of laundering money and whatnot.
Well, I guess they figure the bigger companies are probably publicly traded, and so they're under so much scrutiny already that they're not doing all the bad stuff that the feds are really looking for. They're looking for the smaller entities trying to fly under the radar, that are doing that.
Okay.
That's my guess anyway.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Well, because you were there in Congress when they passed that law during all the discussion and stuff, so you should know.
Exactly. So another required entity is if it's a foreign entity doing business in the state, in the U.S. So even if they're not registered, but you're supposed to register as a foreign entity. But even if you don't register in the state that you're doing business in, if you're doing business in the U.S. as a foreign entity, you're required to report. So how they're going to police that, I have no idea. I'm sure they'll come up with something, but that is in the law at least.
All right.
Let me see if we missed anything.
So January of 24, that's just a few months from now.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be, educating our clients on it on the law firm side. So
you have a whole year for all these current, you said, until January of 25 for everybody to report to the new federal agency.
Well, if the LLC was formed prior to January of 24,
Right.
then they have until January of 25. But anything formed after January of 24, yeah, it's 30 days.
Do it immediately.
Yep. So we wanted to kind of make you aware of this hot off the press law that has come into effect. We've been doing a lot of podcasts recently on new laws. Like you said, there's been quite a few. So be mindful of that. Like I said, if you're using LLCs to buy real estate, just know that there's one more reporting requirement that's going to be out there coming soon. And again, if we're handling the LLC for you, then we'll handle that reporting. If not, then make sure you do it yourself. So if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'll be glad to answer them.
Our contact number is here.
somewhere below our heads on the screen. And if you're listening instead of watching, then just check us out at ects.com or any of our social media channels, and we'll be glad to help you out. All right, well.
That was a good one.
Yeah, not bad. So maybe next time we'll have something different to talk about than new laws.
Hopefully they stop making new laws for us to talk about.
Well, it does give us something to talk about, so I guess that's good. All right, well, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.